Last night marks a couple of very important things. Firstly, it marks the end of two-party politics as we've known it for over a century in this country. It is finished, it is over, it is gone.
So what next for Reform? So they did it. Reform capitalised on their election success and ended up winning the most councillors, 2 mayors and a by-election. But what does that mean for the future of the country? Are we destined for a more fractured future without the two main parties, or will everyone predictably coalesce in the general election, landing the Conservatives or Labour another victory? Well, the Tory brand is certainly damaged.
The beginning of the end of the Conservative Party. They may well have been around since 1832 and the Great Reform Act, but they've been wiped out in the shires of England, wiped out in those West Midlands, southern, southwestern areas where they've got their members, they've got their councillors, they've got their base, they raise the money. They will frankly cease to exist.
And history tells us that when the Tory brand gets damaged, the party moves to the right. After the bruising of the Brexit referendum, the European Research Group formed. And then after Theresa May's stagnation and the Brexit Party, the party decided to elect Boris Johnson. Then after Boris Johnson's COVID scandals, the party went to the extremes with Liz Truss. And then they tried to rectify their infighting mistake with Rishi Sunak. And then they lost the election like they weren't even trying, and then tried to rectify that mistake with the soulless Kemi Badenoch. So the public can no longer trust the party on the economy, on lowering immigration, or on any political issue, because every Prime Minister, since and including David Cameron, has been powerless due to poor election results and infighting, incapable of growing the economy, and misaligned with the base of the party and the right of the country. For example, they're pro-net zero and unable to stop the high levels of immigration. Let's say the Tories rebranded and elected a trusted economist that was also well known enough and harsh enough against immigration. Well, that combination would be impossible to find. But even if they did find that, I don't think the public would ever believe again that they would deliver on their policies once they're elected. That brings me neatly onto Labour.
There's things like the benefit changes, there's things like winter fuel allowance. Do you get the impact that those policy changes are having, and are you looking again at them now?
Well, the reason that we took the tough but right decisions in the budget is because we inherited a broken economy, £22 billion black hole. Now, maybe other Prime Ministers have walked past that, pretended it wasn't there, continued the sort of pretense.
They were your choices, though, to fill that hole,
yes,
weren't they?
I took the choice to make sure our economy was stable because I think it's fundamentally important. Because I took that choice, we're able to invest in the NHS, a record investment, and now waiting lists are coming down. That's the choice I made, that we wanted to make sure waiting lists were coming down. Because of the choice I made, state pension went up £470 last month in April because we're committed to the triple lock. So yes, they were tough decisions, they were the right decisions. Because of those decisions, we are now seeing waiting lists coming down, something people desperately want. Because of that, pensioners are now £470 up as of last month. These are really important changes we brought about, but yes, they're political choices.
They were elected on the basis of change, a positive message aimed at improving people's lives. But then they cut winter fuel allowance. The economy grew 0.1% and then 0.6%, which is hardly inspiring. And meanwhile, the number of small boats crossing has passed 10,000 people already this year. What's changed is the brand. But for many, we still have well-known career politicians and uninspiring middle managers telling everyone that everything will be fine and things will get better. Meanwhile, the big issues of the day still remain. It's funny I use that term. Well, the main difference between the government and Reform is pragmatism versus populism. The government are deliberately taking the slow road, sometimes seeming to ignore the rapid trends and hate that's happening on the internet, over unpopular policies or inaction, in favour of a future idealistic economy in a few years' time that's bigger, where they therefore have more spending power. Reform, on the other hand, are pretty much the opposite. They're built on memes. Their party is effectively taking the Twitter or X feeds and putting them into policies. You got things like Doge going into local election policies. As such, they're actually really vulnerable to instant hate, as we saw when Rupert Lowe was axed from the party. The party lives and dies with Nigel Farage. And now we have Andrew Jenkins having more power, technically, than Nigel Farage. Well, if they don't get along at some point, the party will fall to the same fate as the Tories, and the right will move even further right against the establishment, anti-establishment once again. The other likely scenario is that we get, once again, more extreme right propaganda coming out from Reform, of members being associated with Nazis or just blatant racism. Scandals like that push people back to the more moderate right and centre. Even if Labour don't appeal to the electorate still has the Liberal Democrats and the Greens to gain from, whereas the right literally have the Conservatives or Reform, and if one fails, the other gains, until another established brand comes along. My reading of the election is that the electorate don't know or trust anything will change or improve. Therefore, they're taking as many stabs in the dark as they can to register their own distrust. I have a feeling that if the third parties continue improving, we won't see Keir Starmer or Kemi Badenoch at the next election. But that's kind of irrelevant, because there isn't likely to be a Jeremy Corbyn or Boris Johnson type populist figure to replace them. So as long as Farage navigates the balance between being establishmentarianist enough to make the kind of realistic changes his relatively small party is capable of, while quietening dissenting voices who want more radical action, he could be Prime Minister. But realistically, they're only the fourth largest party by councillors, and it's 4 years until an election. So I'm sceptical. But do you agree with me? Join in the debate below and subscribe.